Coming to you today in Rock City, Illinois, which is part of the Quad Cities. And that, if you look north, that is the Mississippi. That's weird. We're not used to looking north toward the Mississippi, but this is one of the few sections where the Mississippi runs east and west. So if you look north, that's Davenport, Iowa. And then we're in Rock City, Illinois. Learning today about a particularly icy personality named John Looney. And thank you to the lady, the reference librarian. I didn't get her name, but she printed this out for me because to get this. They had a booklet available that they mentioned online, and it comes with a map and everything. And then, but they didn't. It was out of stock, and then she said, "Well, I'll print it out for you and I won't charge you because we're supposed to have it." So that was nice. But it comes with this map of the different locations, and this is Rock City. So he mostly did all his stuff in Rock City, Illinois, and then with the John Looney legend.
Welcome to the John Looney Legend Tour, covering history and architecture of this interesting character called John Looney. John Looney was a gangster. He was sort of like a model for Al Capone. He came before Al Capone. By 1905, he was already pretty well established in the rackets and so forth. Prohibition didn't come till like 1920, but he was around a little bit after that, and then expanded his empire like even more after Prohibition, but then he ended up going to jail not too long after that. You can go on this tour by going to Rock City, Illinois, and then getting this booklet that you can get online, and you can either print it out or look at the PDF on your phone or whatever, or you can get the booklet from the city hall or their visitor center and the library. This is just a PDF copy online, and you can see it has the map of the different spots you're going to go to, and then it gives a brief background of John Looney, and then it gives the different numbers. Now, unfortunately, I guess I only visited probably about half of these because it was taking a long time and it's getting kind of late in the day. But anyway, hopefully you'll at least enjoy the parts that I'm doing. So Rock City, Illinois, so here's Chicago, and then you can see it's about 160 miles west of Chicago in this area here, and then after that you start getting more into like the rest of Iowa and stuff. So it's smack dab in the middle of the Midwest, and but actually, so this city actually had its own very consolidated organized crime under John Looney before Chicago did. Anyway, so you can see the Quad Cities here. So you got the Mississippi River, which actually is running more east and west here, and then you have Rock Island, Moline, East Moline, and Davenport. Originally, that's what they call. That was what was known as the Quad Cities, but now Bittendorf here apparently is even bigger than Moline. So some people were thinking it should be called like the Quint Cities, but people are used to the name Quad Cities, so that name is stuck. A lot of people have never really even heard of the Quad Cities that much, but it's actually got about 400,000 people. And so the one city here is Rock Island. So in this section in Illinois, this is where John Looney did most of his actions. This is a story of John Looney, who ran prostitution, gambling, guns, stolen cars, and illegal liquor in Rock Island for most of the first quarter of the 20th century. His exploits were infamous during a pre-Prohibition era, and after that, retreating to Southwest, he reemerged even more victorious and murderous in the 1920s. His name is synonymous with Johnny Torrio, Al Capone, Bugs Moran, Chicago gangsters who never pushed their sphere of influence 160, or I said 160, it's actually 180 miles to west to Rock Island, where his organized crime operation reigns supreme. So yeah, so this is organized crime. It's not just one person going to rob. This is a very organized thing with payoffs, and organized crime could be hard to defeat, especially back then, because a lot of the cops are all bribed.
This building here on the corner, 1705 East 2nd Avenue. It's the Vandy Grist building. This tan building was also known as the Best Building in Looney's time. It is closely tied to Looney through the suspicious death of a man named Arthur Meter. He was the local manager of an Illinois life insurance company located in this building. He was killed from a fall from the 5th floor on January 9th, 1922. Dr. Joseph DeSalva was soon on the scene and pronounced him dead. Reporters of the day noted that Meter had plunged from this insurance window.
So anyway, I think what I failed to say in that part was that, yeah, they think that this guy owed money, this man owed money to Looney and that he went off the building. He jumped off the. I mean, he either killed himself, but probably was killed actually by Looney's henchmen. Anyway, and then around the same time, there were some other people who were suspected of having gambling debts who were also killed by Looney, and who also mysteriously died. Let's just say it that way.
120. Okay, there we go. 121 16th Street. Okay, see, looks like a really old building, doesn't it?
Yes, John, it is an old building, but the thing to note about it is that it's now a law office, but back during Looney's time, it was a house of prostitution run by a man called George Cripps Holesapple. So he started out working for Looney, but then he went into business for himself with different things, including this brothel. And then at some point, what happened is after the rivalry got big enough, Holesapple and some other people tried to kill John Looney, but they ended up killing his son Connor instead. And then there's a big trial that actually Holesapples and his buddies were actually represented by Clarence Darrow, who obviously is a very famous lawyer. Spot here, this grassy area, then this divider here that's on ramp leading to the Rock Island Centennial Bridge going back over to Davenport. This is where the opera houses was that John Looney wrote some plays for. So he's a very interesting guy, how, you know, he was the big gangster guy, but then he was actually a playwright and all this other stuff. So yeah, but this is where it was. So it's gone now, but anyway. He wrote a play that had to do with an Irish nationalist named Robert Emmet.
Anyway, okay, so this used to be
where a lot of stuff happened in Market Square, as you can imagine. But one of the most important things was that after Mayor Shriver beat up John Looney in City Hall after he had posted some slanderous article about him, John Looney, I guess he was still in the hospital at this time, but anyway, him and his buddies kind of organized like a rally for a politician who happened to be his editor of John Looney's newspaper. Anyway, but they brought in a bunch of outside people, and basically they like staged a riot, pretty much, started a riot, so people got killed and stuff. So I guess they wanted to really just show that the public opinion was against Shriver.
Okay, so that's the Rock Island City Hall. It was a city hall, so it's always important, but especially for a corrupt guy like Looney. But one of the things happened is this is the place in 1912 where Mayor Harry Shriver, fed up with threats and slander, beat Looney to a pulp, kicking off deadly riots. In an effort to blackmail Rock Island's leading public official, Looney had printed a salacious article about Shriver's supposed visits with a prostitute in Peoria. Okay, so the next one we're going to go to is Mayor Shriver's house at 1029 3rd Avenue. Very wide spaces. That's one thing I've noticed in this town. Lots of very wide roads and stuff like that, which is typical a lot of times if you have a really flat area, but it's a very grid. Anyway, so, but in this area, this was Mayor Shriver's home. At times, the newspaper was complaining that he wasn't doing enough to stop the organized crime and Looney and so forth. But then other times, you saw he beat up Looney, and so anyway, he was probably a complicated guy. He probably in some ways was good and sometimes bad, But anyway, but this is his house, Old Chicago. Oh, okay. So apparently this neighborhood is known as Old Chicago, apparently. And I guess that's an old historic, yeah, that's kind of an old style street sign. And anyway, kind of an interesting. Oh yeah, you can see there's people in there restoring it right now. Yeah, let's go. So. What was your name?
John.
John. Okay, I'm also John. How's it going? Yeah, this is John. He's the owner of the mayor's. What was his name? Shriver.
Mayor Shriver.
Yeah, it was. So he owns the house. It's his private residence, but he's restoring it and everything. And then
Yeah, we've been doing it for quite a while. Our property goes all the way over to the 92.
Oh, okay.
And then over about 30 feet past these trees over here on the wall.
Uh huh.
Yeah. Summertime's a better time to come.
Yeah. Are you trying to make the house like close to that period as you can then, or is it like?
No, the agreement I have with the city is to leave the outside like it was when Looney was here. Yeah, well, we have a preservation commission that all of the houses in a certain part of Rock Island are required to meet to go through the preservation commission if they're going to make changes on the outside of the house.
Oh, okay.
This is a historically significant house, so consequently we'll have a few more restrictions on what we can do on the outside.
Yeah.
Which is usually nothing.
Yeah.
Just leave it the way it was originally.
Yeah.
Put it back into the original conditions.
Oh, okay.
Eventually this will have shutters on all the windows. And
oh, okay.
this porch, believe it or not, was rebuilt just about 5 years ago. The lattice work is original except for one of the panels was built from scratch.
All right, well, I think I might let you get going, but yeah, nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice
have a good day.
Good luck with you.
Yeah. More old buildings around here. Okay, this is the library. I was already there. Looked like a nice library. I wouldn't mind go in there some other time and hang out. Okay, there's this Goodyear. Okay, so it's just this parking lot here. 1824th Avenue. Okay, so anyway, but there was some building here in this spot where let's see, what was it? It was the Matthias Shell Carpentry.
Okay, so who that guy was, that Matthias Schnell, and you can see we're right next to the new Argus building. But anyway, he was a guy. He was a contractor, or had a construction business, and he involved with, I think it was 1897. He was involved with this scam that they have to do with using inferior materials on this city storm drain. Anyway, so that was like one of the first things that we know about crimes that John Looney did. Now I think he was convicted of that, but then it was overturned. So anyway, so he got away with it basically, but that was the first sign that he was kind of like a corrupt guy.
Block here. Okay, so this is on this next block, which is now you can see they made that entire block that's ahead of us into like a pedestrian mall. But anyway, on that block was let's see, can I see? It's supposed to be where Downtown Tavern is now. But on that block was where John Looney had the newspaper, and he used it as a way to kind of actually control his empire. Which anyway, but yeah, it was on that block. Come onto this pedestrian mall street, whatever you want to call it, in the snow because three really important things happen in this. Actually, it's all one building. You can see. Well, this is all one building, and then maybe that's built on. Maybe there used to be another place there. Anyway, so this is where this building on 2nd Avenue. This is where it used to be a barber, and this is where now it's a Thai place. But this is where John Looney got in an argument with someone, and then and the guy beat him with a gun, and then he tried shooting him, and the guy tried actually pulling the trigger and shooting him with it, but actually he didn't know how to do the gun right, so the guy lived. Now
that is, John Looney lived.
Now this building is actually the office of U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth. This used to be a Western Union Telegraph office where John Looney worked.
And the reason that's important about the telegraph office is that's why he came to Rock Island. He was from Ottawa, Illinois, and he worked for the telegraph company. Then he was transferred here. Then at that same time, then he started going to law school and became a lawyer. But that's what brought him to this town.
And then probably the really important part for his power base was at this location here. This is where his law office was. And then his newspaper, and basically the newspaper was used as in a large part for him blackmailing people. He was big into like blackmail blackmailing people, getting them like seen with prostitutes, saying we're gonna put stuff in the newspaper. That's part of how he had everybody under his control, this mafia style gangster in this area. Anyway, so all that happened all right next to each other here.
And the thing about that is, I'm not sure if it was at that location or it was at the later location of the newspaper where he also had a big brothel there going on at the same time, running out of his office. So I'm not unclear about that, but I think that was like the early location of his office, newspaper office, that is.
Really still has that old feel, you know, where you can kind of imagine these old buildings back during the 20s, during Prohibition and the gangsters and everything going on, and lots of corruption and everything. And you can just imagine, you know, on a cold day like this, they'd probably be going to John Looney to get some liquor. And whatever, gambling, he controlled this town. You know, he was the man controlling this town.
Yeah, the thing about that blackmail is, yeah, he just was very good, successful at doing that, just having like almost all the public officials in the whole town having information on them, that he was going to their brothels. He was like having people take pictures of them and everything, you know, so he had a very effective way of controlling a lot of the politicians in the town.
Okay, it's a funeral home, but it used to be Dr. Joseph DeSalva's home. Dr. Joseph DeSalva's home. Now it is a funeral home, so it's quite a big house.
He was a doctor during that time, obviously a rich doctor, like a lot of doctors are, and then probably one of the only doctors in town, and he would be often called to these different murders.
This house here, which is real close to the Joseph DeSalva house, the Potter house. Okay, so it's actually, Mimi Potter, the owner of the Argus, built for herself and her 3 children in 1907.
Yeah, so in the Argus, and her family, and then the Argus, they were instrumental in eventually bringing John Looney down, because they kept putting stuff in the newspapers and kept, you know, I guess you'd say almost kind of shaming the local officials into doing something about John Looney. And they, you know, he was always trying to like accuse her of different things, like having an affair with her gardener and all this. And that's how he operated, trying to smear people with different things like that, but he was his enemy.
Okay, this house here, this is the Walter Rossfeld home right there. Now it's a church.
Walter Rosenfeld, he was the mayor of Rock Island later on, and then he was also indicted for a murder plot against Looney.
Flies here. Yeah, okay, I think I'm going to think that was probably enough of the John Looney tour. I mean, I just noticed there's still a lot. I mean, it gives you a feeling. I mean, so signing out from Rock Island, Illinois, which still has the feeling of kind of like a moderately sized, a small metropolitan Chicago, like, you know, anyway, gangster type area back in the 20s. But now it's just a pretty peaceful town.